Sometimes this job is very weird. Occasionally you find yourself remaking videos that you thought you'd made a few months ago because things have subtly changed. Other times you find yourself remaking videos because things have changed with all of the subtlety of a rhinoceros at a ballet recital, such as it is with ArkOS. If you watched my which firmware should you install on the G350 video, and this was my favourite of the bunch. But now several things have happened. There's a new build of unofficial OS, which seems to work a lot better than it did when I tested it. There's Newly, which still seems to be in development, but there are fixes for some of the issues that I had before. And then there's what happens to ArkOS, because unfortunately, the Ark has sunk. We actually got the message on the 30th of December. It's just taken me this long to get around to making a video about it because, well, I've been swamped recently, but dArkOS has replaced ArkOS. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, dArkOS sounds like the operating system that Darth Vader would use. I'm sure it's the thing that powers his little chest plate, and between fighting the Resistance, you'd often find him playing Stardew Valley. Thank God for Portmaster. I expect it saved countless worlds. However, I digress. ArkOS has now basically been discontinued, retired and archived. However, that announcement itself was fairly terse, and it doesn't really go deeply into why the development stopped. ArkOS was built on Ubuntu, which is actually quite old now. dArkOS, however, is built on a thing called Debian, I think you'd pronounce it, and this should make the operating system more customizable. It should allow for more updates without reflashing and make it easier for others to fork it and build on the distro. But you don't need to know all of that because likely you're here because you want to just try and install this thing and see how it's running. Now, there have been some reports that using dArkOS is going to give you a 500% extra performance boost, but none of that is true. If you put these side by side, you'll probably get about the same performance for pretty much the same systems. But even though you should really curb your expectations on this, dArkOS is pretty solid and a fairly good replacement for its predecessor. So in this video, I am going to show you how to get up and gaming as quickly as possible. I think if you did the whole process, it would probably take you less than 30 minutes, although that depends on how many games you've got that you're copying onto cards and so forth. So we're not going to have a lot of complicated instructions here. We'll have a few back-end settings, but you may choose to turn them on or not. That's up to you. What I'm going to do, though, is show you how to flash the OS onto the card, how to install your ROMs, how to set up a second SD card if that's what you want to do, and I've got a couple of settings in here as well that will make your life a little bit easier. And I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. There's a few things that you'll need before you start, and I've got links to them in the description below. Firstly, 7-zip. If you haven't got this installed already, it is such a useful tool. If you're in this hobby, at least, it's almost a necessity. And secondly is going to be Rufus, which is the tool that I use for flashing images to SD cards. You can use something like Balena Etcher instead, that's up to you, but I'm using Rufus because it's the thing that I like the most. You'll also need to get the right version of dArkOS, and again, all of the links for this are down below, but I'll walk you through everything in the video as well. So before you start, make sure you've got your BIOS and your ROM files ready. You'll need to copy them from the card that came with the device if that's what you want to do. Now, I can't show you where to get ROMs and BIOS files from, but a good Google search for the platforms that you want might be a good first step. One thing to note, you should never ever use the card that comes with your device for a long-term gaming card. They are just so unreliable. You have to get another card, otherwise at some point you'll turn the device on and it just won't work. You don't need to have a huge card to get started. A 64 gig card from Amazon Basics will do the job for most things, and then you can expand it later if you want to. So make sure you install 7-zip and Rufus, and whilst you settle down ready to begin, let's have an intro. Okay, first things first, we're going to run down exactly how to get this up and running. The first thing we're going to do is go to the dArkOS GitHub, and on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a thing that says Releases. Click on Latest Release, and you'll get the latest release. They don't make this too complicated, you know. Now, here's where I've seen a few people fall down. You'll notice we're installing this for the G350. Well, you'll notice that there are two files that say dArkOS G350, and some people have just downloaded one of them. The fact is that sometimes with 7-zip, you spread big archives out over more than one file so that it's easier to upload. So you want to make sure that you download both of those files, O1 and O2. And once you've done that, you're going to extract them. To do this, right-click on one of the files, find the 7-zip icon or folder, and then choose Extract here. That's all you've got to do. It's very simple, and you should end up with a file which says dArkOS_G350_Trixie, and so on. That's the file that we're actually going to be copying onto our card. So the two files that you've just downloaded, you can now get rid of. Just make sure you keep that image file that we've just extracted. The next thing to do is to put your SD card into your computer, and we're going to boot up Rufus. You should see your SD card listed in the top box, but do make sure that you're using the right one here, because otherwise you could wipe something that you don't intend to. However, I have never seen this show one of your actual hard drives on here, so you shouldn't be able to wipe out the main drives of your computer. Just check to be on the safe side. From there, make sure your boot selection says disk or ISO image, and then click on the select button next to it. A file window is going to pop up, and you're going to select the image file that you've just extracted. Once done, hit the start button and just let Rufus do its thing. And once Rufus has finished, take the SD card out, and we're going to put this straight back into your console. Now, the great thing with dArkOS is that there's no extra files that you've got to copy across. You've downloaded the firmware for the G350, and that should be perfectly fine. Do let me know if you have any problems with this, though, because I will see if I can find solutions if people come to me and say, hey, I've had a problem here. One thing to note, I've got an earlier version of the G350, and I know that there's been a few hardware changes in recent months. So whilst this should work, I can't guarantee that you won't run into problems. Again, let me know in the comments if you do, and I'll check for any fixes that I can find, and I'll put them into a pinned comment if there's anything that you need to know. Okay. So once you've done flashing the firmware, you're going to take out your SD card, put it back into your G350, make sure you use the right slot. You want the port that says TF1, which is on the left-hand side of the console if you are facing the console, and then you just turn it on and you let it do its thing. Now, this takes a little while to finish, but once it's done, you'll get straight into the emulation station interface. And if you see that, then you are 90% of the way there. Again, any problems, let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can do. For now, though, press the start button and go down to quit, and you want to shut down the device from this point. Okay, so this is where we need to decide initially at least, whether or not you want to use a single SD card or a dual SD card setup. If you're using a single SD card, then you can skip this next little bit. But if you want a 2 SD card setup, let me run you through how to do that quickly. So the first thing that you need to do is format your second SD card as exFAT. Make sure there's nothing else on the card. You just want a blank card to go in with. With your original card in your console, you put the second card in the second slot and power on. And when it's booted up, you press your start button to go into settings, go down to options, then choose the advanced folder at the top. At the bottom of that list that comes up, there's a thing that says switch to SD2 for ROMs. Hover over that and press A, and your console, it will take a while, but your console will set up your second SD card for you. It'll copy all of the folders and things into the right place where it needs them. Just let it do its thing. Shut down your console by pressing Start, going to Quit, pressing A, and then shut down the system. Take your second SD card out, pop it back in your machine, and if you're on a single SD card setup, then You take out your first SD card and put that in the computer, and we're basically all back in the same place again. Okay, so you should see a drive come up that says Easy ROMs if you're on a single card setup, and whatever you labeled your second SD card as if you're using a dual card setup. This is where the system is going to store all of your ROM and BIOS files. So right now, you have to open up the Easy ROMs, or that second SD card, find the BIOS folder, and copy all of the BIOS things that I said earlier to copy onto your computer somewhere. Copy those onto that new SD card. Once that's done, take any ROMs that you've got stored and then copy those onto the individual systems folders in this drive. And then once done, you can take the card out of your computer again, put it back in the correct slot in your G350. So for single card users, that's going to be the slot on the left. For dual card users, that's the slot on the right. And for a basic setup, that's it. If you want to go off and explore the system and play a few games, you can do that right now. But just for completeness, I should say, if you're on a dual SD card setup and you want to go back to a single card setup, all you got to do is repeat the process. You go to Options, to the Advanced menu, and then at the bottom, you see a thing that says Switch to Main SD for ROMs, press A, goes through a bit of a process again, but this time it doesn't take nearly as long, and then you're back to using your single SD card for everything. Now, I could end the video there, but there are a few quality of life settings that you might like to use, a few things that make your overall experience an awful lot better. And to set these up, to start off with, we're going to go into RetroArch. So on the main menu, find the link that says RetroArch, and then you press A, and you'll see you've got two different options here, RetroArch and RetroArch 32. These are basically the same thing. They're basically different versions of the same emulation system. And these different versions will play different emulators. Now, the operating system is going to choose which version is right for you, so you don't need to worry about all of that. But it does mean that if you want to make changes to RetroArch, you're going to have to do it in both of these places. For the time being, I'm going to choose the one on top, and we're going to go into the RetroArch menu. To start off with, we're going to change a few hotkeys. These are the things that you can do in-game that tells the emulator how to behave, and this will work on virtually everything here apart from Nintendo DS and PSP because they're using separate emulators in the first place. So move down to where it says Settings, and then press A, then find Input and press A again, and scroll down to where it says Hotkeys and press your A button once more. And in that menu, we can change which keys are bound to which button. The first thing we're going to do is change the Hotkey Enable button. And in order to do that, we're going to press A and hold the button that you want to change it to. And I'd suggest changing it to the middle button, the M button here, because for this particular device, that seems to be the best option. So hover over where it says Hotkey Enable. You can use your D-pad to move up and down. And then press A. And when the little box comes up, hold down the middle button until that box goes away, and you've got that set. The next thing we're going to do is find where it says Menu Toggle, not the controller combo, but the one underneath that. It just says Menu Toggle. And we're going to bind that to the X button. And the thing to remember here, and I've made this mistake before, is that you don't need to hold down both the menu button and the X key right now. You just need to hold the X key down. So all you've got to do at this point is to press your A button, and then when the box comes up, hold down the X button until that box goes away again. Next, find where it says Quit. Again, not Quit Controller Combo, just Quit. And we're going to set this up to the Start button. So press A. When the box comes up, hold down your Start key until the box goes away. Now we're going to do fast forward and rewind here as well. So move down to where it says Fast Forward. My preference at the moment is to use Fast Forward Toggle. And then we're going to press A here, and we're going to bind that to R1. Finally, we're going to move to Rewind and do the same thing again. This time we're going to hold down L1 until you get that confirmation. Now move down to where it says load state, and for this you're going to press A and then L2, and then save state, and you're going to go A and R2. And then you want to move to the next save state slot and press A, then press right on the D-pad, and the previous save state slot, press A and left on the D-pad. Then I like to scroll down to where it says show FPS toggle and set that to Y. Then right at the bottom, your keyboard overlay toggle, I like to set that to B. And when you've done that, press your B button again to go back to the input menu and scroll down to where it says confirm quit and make sure that that is off. You can press your A button here to turn that on and off. Okay, we've done with input. So press your B button to go back to the main menu settings. Then head over to video, down to scaling, and we want to look at aspect ratio. Tapping the A button over that gives you a lot of different options, and you want to make sure that you set that to core provided. Because I think out of the box it's set to 4:3, and that actually means that some games won't play at the correct aspect ratio. So change that to core provided, then press your B button twice to get you back out into the main dArkOS menu. Go down to configuration file, then press A, then save current configuration and press A again, and your current configuration will be saved. You can now press the menu button and the start button to quit out of RetroArch and go back into dArkOS. Now don't forget, you've got to follow these steps once more using the RetroArch 32 settings. Now I could leave it there, but there's one other quality of life thing that I'm starting to do on all of my devices right out of the box, and it doesn't matter who set this up. You always need, whichever company does it, you always need to go back into RetroArch and set this up. So what you've got to do first of all is open up a PlayStation game. And to do that, go into your PlayStation folder, assuming you've got some PlayStation games to begin with. Open up any game that you want. I tend to use Ape Escape because that's an easy way to test whether or not this works. Ape Escape uses DualShock controllers by default, and by default, DualShock is not set up in RetroArch. So we're going to make sure that every game opens using that DualShock controller. So once the game has loaded, press the menu and X buttons to get into the RetroArch menu. And you don't have to do this twice for each system, because whichever system loads now is the system that will load your PlayStation games always. So by default, you're going to be in the quick menu, which is exactly where you want to be. Now, hover over Controls and press A, then Port 1 Controls and press A again. Then under Device Type, change that to DualShock. Press B to back out onto the Controls menu. Then hover over Manage Remap Files, press A. Then Save Core Remap Files. Then you can press B twice to back out onto the Quick menu and A to resume. And now you're using the game like Ape Escape, which uses exclusively DualShock controllers. Now you should be able to load into that game and see that DualShock working. A quick note here, I did actually have to quit out of this and then reload the game again for this to actually take effect, but this does work, I promise you. Okay, that's your quality of life stuff all sorted out, and for most people that's going to be absolutely everything that you need. There's a few things that I'm not really going to cover in this video. I'm not going to cover Portmaster or scraping your media because this device doesn't natively connect to Wi-Fi. You can get a Wi-Fi dongle, although you've got to be very, very careful about the make and model that you choose, but you can get one. And that will let you do things like Portmaster. So it is absolutely worth it because Portmaster's fantastic. And maybe I'll cover that in another video. But if you just want to get your games running and get the system running, then this is everything that you need to know for now. Hopefully you can see from this how simple it is to set up. And once you're done, that's it. You never have to do it again. You just flash, you boot, and then you play. And if this video has helped you out at all, then please do give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments how you've got on. But that's it for this video. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope to see you the next time that we enter my retro corner, which isn't nearly as rude as it sounds. Happy gaming.